Space Cats. Helen here, reporting live from GameandBrowse.com. Today, we're going to be taking a look at one of my all-time favorite games. A game with a retro future style, a strange cult following, and a recent VR revival. That's right, today we're looking at Space Channel 5. Game and Browse Swing and Report Show. But first, here's a little bit of Helen history. My dad and I got a Sega Dreamcast for Christmas of 1999, only 3 months after the launch of the console. My mom had actually found one for us at a discounted price and snapped it up as our big Christmas present that year. In addition to the console itself, my parents selected 2 games for us, Flag to Flag Racing and Sonic Adventure, the latter of which is still one of my favorite games to this day. We played the absolute heck out of the Dreamcast for years, and we bought titles for the console up until they couldn't be found in retail stores anymore. A few years later, on one summer Goodwill trip, my mom and I found stacks of sealed copies of one Dreamcast game that I had never seen before. This game had unique lenticular artwork and an adorable pink-headed Barbie-esque cover girl, and of course, it was Space Channel 5. I remember showing it to my mom, and she bought it for me for the Goodwill price of $4.99. It's funny because to this day, when I talk about video games and the Dreamcast with my mom, she refers to it as Space Channel $4.99. Space Channel 5 is a dancing rhythm game that was released on the Dreamcast in North America on June 6th of 2000. The game starts in the year 2499 with an alien invasion on Spaceport 9, a hub for ships docking on their space journeys. Under orders from her director, Fuse, our protagonist takes her swing and report show to Spaceport 9 to investigate. Upon her arrival, Ulala finds out that the aliens have not just taken over, but they're forcing people to dance by shooting hostages with their ray guns. But before we get too far into plot and gameplay, I'd like to talk a little bit about the voice behind our Cosmic Kitty protagonist. Ulala is voiced by American actress, songwriter, and television personality Apollo Smile. Smile, who was deemed the live-action anime girl, is a musician and voice actor that was prevalent in the early American anime scene, hosting anime-specific vignettes on the Sci-Fi Channel in the late 90s. Her live-action vignettes would play in between the broadcasts of anime movies on the cable channel. Smile was also well known for performing her original music live at conventions around this time. And now, on with the show. This is where Space Channel 5's gameplay begins. The aliens that have invaded, called Marolians, are the main antagonist, and they have to be outdanced before they're able to be blasted by Ulala's weapon of choice, which is the funky blue blaster that she keeps strapped to her garter. The game is of the call and response genre, in which the computer performs a set of actions, and then the player is expected to mimic those actions. But Space Channel 5 isn't just monkey see, monkey do, because these actions have to be performed in time with the musical score playing in the background. After all, this is a rhythm game. While dancing with Ulala, the player must emulate the actions of the Marolians with enough precision and accuracy to keep the viewer percentage high enough. The game will punish you if you have 2 left feet, because for every dance move you miss, you'll lose a try. Tries are represented by those little hearts in the corner of the screen. If you lose all of your hearts, your newscast is immediately canceled and the game is over. I hope you don't get stage fright. As Ulala dances her way through the spaceport, if you're able to play well enough, you'll recruit hostages. If you recruit enough hostages, these NPC characters will join your party posse and dance behind you, adding a nice little extra to your gameplay. I mean, what's not to love about a giant dance troupe following you around everywhere you go? And of course, what's a good game without a few side quests? In addition to outdancing the Marolians, freeing the space hostages, and trying to get to the bottom of the invasion, you must also protect your honor as a newscaster. A full-scale alien invasion is a pretty hot topic, right? So of course, the other newscasters have been drawn to the story. Throughout the game, Ulala will have to outdance rival reporters from other space news channels, like Pudding from Channel 42 and Jaguar from the Space Pirate News Network. These mini-boss battles serve as a fun way to become more immersed in Space Channel 5's world. Upon defeating one of these other reporters, you will get one of their custom party members to join your dance posse. The music will also change at this time to reflect any new instrumentalists that have joined your dance posse, with the melody changing to be carried by that instrument. For example, the soundtrack will become more guitar-driven after you acquire Pudding's guitar player, and more keyboard-driven after you acquire the space keyboardist much later in the game. Speaking of the music, can we talk about this stellar soundtrack for a second? I just have to fangirl over it. There are some serious bops in this game. Everybody knows the Space Channel 5 title soundtrack, Mexican Flyer, and this track is amazing, but the whole game is just filled with music that blends funk and retro big band swing for a combination that is memorable, fun, and absolutely keeps me coming back. Seriously, I listen to this soundtrack in my car, while doing homework, and even while doing chores around the house. The soundtrack might be my favorite part of Space Channel 5. Another fun thing about the soundtrack is that the songs change to reflect your in-game performance. If you rock your dance moves and rescue all the hostages, the game's upbeat, peppy soundtrack will play like normal. But if you play poorly, the music will reflect your mistakes. The soundtrack will become slower, sluggish, and more dissonant. Ulala will also occasionally flail about or miss a beat if her performance suffers. Meanwhile, while we were chilling and listening to music, Ulala has continued to outdance rival reporters, Marolians, and Marolian bosses like Coco Tapioca, Marollarita, and Marolian Monroe. While dancing your way around the galaxy, you end up visiting many eclectic and funky locations, one of which is the Marolian seizure-inducing base. No, seriously, the game actually gives you a motion sickness warning as you rush through this particular level. I have never seen a feature like that in a game before. One interesting boss battle Easter egg can only be seen if the player is playing with a first-party VMU in their controller. When control switches between the two parties, the character in charge can be seen on the VMU's screen at that time. How funky fresh is that? What a cool little tidbit to include in the game. Towards the climax of the game, in a typical plot twist fashion, the Marolians aren't actually the bad guys. They're being brainwashed by a mysterious signal. With the help of Fuse and Jaguar, it is revealed that, spoiler alert, you are working for the bad guys. That's right, Space Channel 5 CEO Chief Blank has been sending out a mysterious radio signal that brainwashes the Marolians. At this point in the game, the party chases after Chief Blank, who attempts to escape the Channel 5 studio. While chasing the antagonist, we discover probably the coolest Easter egg that Space Channel 5 has to offer. Space Michael. Yep, that Michael. One of the hostages to be saved from the Marolians is none other than a Dreamcast representation of the King of Pop himself, Michael Jackson. After saving MJ from the Marolians, he joins your dance posse, and immediately afterwards, the party posse flashes some very Michael-inspired dance moves. And yes, there's plenty of to go around. Honestly, it's no surprise that Michael Jackson made a cameo in Space Channel 5, as MJ had a history of involvement with Sega back in the 90s and the 2000s, with games like Michael Jackson's Moonwalker in arcades and then later on the Genesis, as well as his alleged involvement with the soundtrack of Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Now, I say alleged because there are numerous sources out there that both confirm and deny Jackson's involvement with Sonic 3. Rumor has it that Jackson was shown Space Channel 5 too late in development to play a huge role in the game, but he loved the game so much that the developers were able to fit him in as a guest appearance deep into the game's 4th chapter. While Space Michael only plays a small role in Space Channel 5, he plays a much larger role in the game's sequel, Space Channel 5 Part 2, which we'll cover more in depth later. After rescuing Space Michael and the rest of the Marolian Council, Ulala and the party posse find themselves faced with Blank's quote-unquote ultimate reporter, Evola, a dark, robotic version of Ulala herself. If you can manage to get past Evola's jerky movements and hard-to-understand robot voice, you're then sent to the hardest part of the game, in my opinion, Blank's battleship, Giant Evola. Giant Evola has a very unique gimmick. Whatever moves she does, you must respond with the opposite moves. For example, if Giant Evola dances up, 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 left, You have to dance down, 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 right. This makes for some very quick and tricky code switching. It took us a while to get past this section. If you find yourself stuck here during your gameplay, like we were, try turning the Dreamcast controller upside down during this part. We found that this helped immensely. Thanks to GameFAQs for this idea. Finally, after fighting off Giant Ulala, Ulala is faced with CEO Chief Blank himself, who is revealed to be in the giant television screen. Before the final battle, Blank reveals his motive behind the brainwashing scheme: to be the most watched space news network in the galaxy and have the highest ratings possible. Blank pulls Ulala into his blank dimension within the television screen, where the final dance battle begins. Meanwhile, in the fight against Giant Ulala, it's revealed that the sound system for Fuse's ship was broken, leaving no music for Ulala to dance to. In order to encourage Ulala in the final fight, many of her adoring fans and Channel 5 viewers come together to watch the battle between Blank and Ulala play out. They also sing an a cappella version of Mexican Flyer to encourage Ulala. Ulala must shoot blank screens and alternate between her two blasters depending on the images shown. With the encouragement of her fans and some fast reflexes on the player's part, Ulala is able to destroy Chief Blank, free those under the mind control, and save the galaxy. The game ends with Ulala, her fans, the other reporters, and all of the Merolians marching together to the end of the galaxy. Now, if you want to experience the funky future fun that is Space Channel 5, you have a couple of options on how you could play it. You could play the original game on the Dreamcast, like we did, or you could pick up Space Channel 5 Special Edition on the PlayStation 2, which came out a few years later. But if you really want a unique experience, you can play Space Channel 5 Ulala's Cosmic Attack on the Game Boy Advance. Ulala's Cosmic Attack was published by Sega and THQ in 2003 for Nintendo's Game Boy Advance. This was right around the time that Sega properties began to appear on Nintendo's GameCube and Game Boy Advance after Sega's withdrawal from the home console market. Even though Space Channel 5 Ulala's Cosmic Attack sounds like a new installment in the franchise, it's actually just a port of the original Dreamcast game that has been compressed to be playable on the Game Boy Advance. The game plays the same as the original and does have some of the original music from the Dreamcast version. However, as expected, much of the voiceover work has been replaced by text, and the music has of course been altered to be better suited for a handheld system. The models look a little more blocky than one would hope, but that's kind of what happens when you attempt 3D on the Game Boy Advance. As a longtime Space Channel 5 fan, I think this particular version of the game is a bit uncommon. I have never seen a copy for sale in the wild, and while there are always a few listings for it loose on eBay, I hardly ever see the game sell for less than $40 as of the time of this video. Boxed complete copies of this game can fetch a pretty penny for sure. I actually got super lucky when I found my loose copy at MoGameCon 4 last summer for a very reasonable price, and it even came in this cool custom case. Needless to say, I was very happy to add this to my Space Channel 5 merch collection. And just when you thought the dance party was over, a few years after the game's initial release, Space Channel 5 Part 2 was released in 2002 on the Dreamcast and PlayStation 2 in Japan, and in America and Europe on the PlayStation 2 in 2003. I feel it's worth noting that the game was not marketed as Part 2 in the United States. Here, the game was simply released as Space Channel 5 Special Edition, as mentioned earlier. This 2-disc set comes with a port of the first game on Disc 1, and then the sequel quietly hidden away on Disc 2. It would have been nice to see the sequel come out on the Dreamcast here in the United States, like it did in Japan. But seeing as production of the Dreamcast had already ceased here in the United States long before 2003, I consider us lucky to have gotten the sequel here in America in any capacity. Anyways, into Space Channel 5 Part 2. Without going too far in depth into Space Channel 5 Part 2, and turning this into an hour-long documentary, much to Aaron's dismay, I'm sure, we did play through Part 2 here at GameandBrowse.com, and we just wanted to give you a quick synopsis of the plot, as well as review some of the differences in the gameplay mechanics between Space Channel 5 Parts 1 and 2. Space Channel 5 Part 2 starts with the space president getting abducted by the leader of a group of dancing bandits called the Rhythm Rogues. And of course, it's Ulala's job to bring her swingin' report show to the scene of the crime to save the president. After a cat and mouse chase through the galaxy, filled with old faces like Pudding, Jaguar, and Hurg, as well as new faces like Pine, the space police, Ulala eventually confronts Purge, the leader of the Rhythm Rogues, outdances him with the help of her friends, saves the space president and the entire galaxy, once again from being mindless slaves subject to a lifetime of dancing. One thing that's worth noting about Part 2 is that there are now some additional facets to the gameplay. While most of the gameplay elements remain the same as in the previous 2 installments, there is now a "hey" option, which will be thrown in occasionally with the standard directional terms and chew to shoot. This "hey" option is now reserved for saving hostages, while the standard chew is to be used on the bandits. Furthermore, held notes now exist, which should be pretty self-explanatory. One thing that I can't decide if I like or not are the added singing sections in Space Channel 5 Part 2. In Part 2, the NPCs will occasionally sing a line, usually revealing some more plot exposition while doing so, and then give dance commands, to which Ulala and her troupe will respond with another sung line and then dance back. In addition to giving you more hearts now, which is another cool feature in Part 2, these ratings can be changed into stars, which will determine how many chances you have during boss battles. So if you have higher ratings during the level portions of the chapter, you'll have an easier time fighting that level's boss. I wish they had had this mechanic in Part 1. The music in Part 2 is specifically awesome, because in the scene where you eventually rescue Space Michael, there are many Michael Jackson-inspired lines of music that have been remixed into the soundtrack, including samples from both Smooth Criminal and Thriller.
Indeed.
While I can't find proof of this particular Space Michael scene sounds like it has Michael actually scatting in the background, which I think is a nice homage to the now late King of Pop.
Space Michael.
Let's dance! Up!
While I enjoy both Space Channel 5 Parts 1 and 2, I feel that the gameplay in Part 2 is better, but the plot for Part 1 is more compelling. The lack of pre-rendered backgrounds in Part 2 is nice, but Part 1 I felt had stronger voice acting, because some of the voice actors, like the actors for Pudding and Fuse, were actually changed for the sequel, which kinda disappointed me. For every one compliment I can think of to pay Part 1, I can think of a parallel good thing to praise Part 2 for. The same can be said for criticisms, however. Both games lack a decent save system, often sending you way too far back when you lose. I guess that's because both games are fairly short, so the developers wanted to add this additional challenge. If I had to compare the Space Channel 5 games to another type of game, I'd say they're kind of like playing something like a Bop It or a Simon. All of the games in my hands right now are of the call and response genre, in which the computer does a set of commands, and the player is expected to emulate those commands. Now, there's nothing wrong with this style of gameplay. They're quick, fun, and easy to pick up and put down. And sometimes, that's all you want in a game. Space Channel 5 has exclusively been a console franchise, until now. 18 years after the release of Space Channel 5 Part 2, we Cosmic Kitties finally have a new installment in the Space Channel 5 franchise. Enter Space Channel 5 VR, Kinda Funky Newsflash. I have been waiting for this game since I first heard rumors about this project on the internet a few years ago. After numerous delays, as well as staggered platform launches, Space Channel 5 VR was released back in February of this year here in North America for the PSVR. However, we don't own a PSVR. Between the still undetermined PC release dates, as well as the current COVID-19 pandemic forcing Sega to send employees home for safety reasons, we have no idea when Space Channel 5 VR will be available to us on the Oculus Rift. But even with these delays, I'm still super excited for the eventual release of Space Channel 5 VR. But one notable omission has me a bit upset. The original voice actress for Ulala, Apollo Smile, is not reprising her role as the galaxy's favorite reporter. The voice heard in Space Channel 5 VR instead belongs to a high-profile name in the anime industry, Jeremy Lee, who has lent her voice talents to Sword Art Online, Sailor Moon, and Persona 5, to name just a few of her roles. This voice actress switch was not intentional, as Grounding Inc., the development team behind Space Channel 5 VR, wanted Smile to reprise her role but could not contact her, as Smile is currently removed from the acting and anime scenes. Sources say that Smile is currently employed as a dance teacher back in her home state of Connecticut. I hope that the Oculus Rift port of Space Channel 5 VR comes out sooner rather than later, because being able to experience this beloved childhood franchise in an immersive VR experience would be a beautiful tribute to my younger self. Young Helen would be so excited to see that as an adult, she is actually able to dance with Ulala in VR. With that said, soon enough, hopefully we'll all be dancing with Ulala once again on Space Channel 5. This is Helen, signing off for now.